Welcome to the Intuitive Websites Internet Marketing Podcast, bringing you the country's top podcast on the subject of internet marketing. Welcome to this week's episode of the Intuitive Websites Internet Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Glenn Thayer, and today with me, we've got the entire group. We've got the CEO of Intuitive Websites, Thomas Young, Dennis McCarthy, and web marketing specialist, Ray Cameron. And we're going to talk about getting website content done, because that's always one of the most challenging things for having a website that not only looks good and makes conversions, but, well, you make conversions when you have content done. So how do we get content done for a website, guys? What's the first thing that all of our listeners need to do?
Well, it's interesting because content is so important on the web. We can't stress how important it is, but it is the thing that seems to be the biggest stumbling block for our clients. And they fall into two major categories. They either don't have time to do the content, or they're not sure how to do the content or how to get it done. And then it all comes down to time and money. So I think what we're going to talk about in this podcast, first of all, is that you've got to make the time. And you've got to put a budget aside if you don't have the time, and put the effort into getting content done, because it is absolutely critical to your business. And because the web is such an important marketing tool. Keep in mind, I think the major point I want to say is that it takes skill and practice if you're going to write content. Because if you're not going to invest the money into it and you want to do it yourself, then you've got to take the time to get training on how to write web content. And there's nothing like repetition. The more you do it, the easier it'll flow. And there's no, it's not an accident that the formula for success on the web is based on how good your content is, and how good your content is based on how good a writer you are, what kind of value that your services and products provide, and how you can organize all that and present it on the web. So all these things have to come together, but I think really the bottom line is to get website content done, it's got to be a priority. You've got to see it as an important part of what you're doing on the web. Now,
when you look at that, is that something where, let's look at small business instead of big business. Let's take it down to small business, when most of the people that are going to be handling the content is going to be the business owner. I mean, is this where somebody brings in an external marketing company to do it? Or is this something where they know their business inside and out, so they're the ones saying, hey, so what do you do? Well, this is where I do. I mean, where do they go from that?
The best content resides with just a few people in the organization. Even if you have a small team, there's going to be someone who's the content driver. And so you got to get inside that person's head and pull the content out. Either they do it themselves or someone has to do it for them.
And I would add to that even though the content resides with one person, we can't let that get us stuck on not writing the content. We don't want us to think that, hey, I'm the only one that has the content, so therefore I don't have time, therefore we can't get it done. What we need to do is look at it as a team effort. And really, to do good web copy, you need to be really comfortable with the English language, for one. You need to have an understanding of how people read web copy, and then you need to have a really good understanding of the content that you're writing on. So if you take those three things and combine them, you're not looking at one person doing it. We want to break that up into maybe two or three people, a team of people that can accomplish all those things really well.
So maybe if you're a small business, it might be a smart idea to bring somebody who is familiar with web marketing in to kind of force you to do it. I don't want to call it like a business coach, but really, a marketing team that's an external web marketing team can actually go through and say, okay, here's what you have to do. You have to do point A, point B, point C. We need copy that's broken down a certain way to be able to do it. Because if you have a team of maybe 5 people in your business and that's it, all of them are working full time, you're not going to have time to write copy yourself.
Yeah, as we said earlier, you got to take two paths here. One path is it's done internally or it's done externally. Now, we offer those services in Intuitive Websites, but we also work with a lot of clients that do it internally and kind of look to us to help and kind of monitor and keep an eye on what they're up to.
I'd say if the top brass doesn't take the time or can't take the time to do it, do hire someone, but make sure that person handles it like an ad agency taking on a new client would, where they interview the company, they really learn the industry really well, and they become experts in that content area, and that will give you that extra engine for writing content.
Do you have any notes or ideas on what people can do to actually force themselves or kind of get in the mood to get their content done? Let's say if they don't have the budgets to hire somebody else, or or maybe they're a small company, so I'm going to do it myself. They're the do-it-yourselfers. What types of things can they do? What type of tips do we have that we can?
Well, I think number one is they've got to block it into their schedule, and they need to turn off the phone, turn off the email, and just block it in the schedule and say, I'm going to spend the next hour on content. I think a good first step would be to make a list of the types of content they need to write for the site. And in fact, we'll post this on our blog, but some of the content that they need to write is a homepage copy. And the branding copy on their homepage, key bullet points for the homepage, about us content, captions and taglines that are be throughout the site, headers, product and services information, and then resources-based content, which is kind of how-to content or content that improves the quality of someone's life, helps them do their job better.
Would that be more like a blog content?
Blog content or just informational content. These are the types. Once you make a list of what you've got to write, then you go in and fill the gaps. But as you do that, you've got to get the training and understanding of and I think Ray said this, is not only the English part and the grammar part, but also just, how do people scan websites? How do they read content on websites? And more importantly, how does your target market read content on your site? And then all those things have to match up.
In terms of what to write, a lot of people start with the keyword research, and they look at their keywords for their company, their industry, and they find all the related searches that people are doing just to find out what people are interested in, and they key their content around those keyword themes. And let's not forget that a lot about content writing is for drawing search engine traffic. That's a big part of the reason you do it.
Absolutely critical. And the other thing that we've spent all the time on this year is the concept of messaging being your brand. And the target market that comes to your site, reading your homepage copy and realizing that's who they are, that's what they're about, and that's how they can help me. And that's branding. So when you think about getting all this content together, really start with that branding component. That'll be on your homepage.
Well, I want to pull back for a moment something that Dennis had mentioned as far as SEO copy and for search engine optimization. I think there's so many buzzwords that are out there right now on the web. I think people get confused and say, well, I need to write copy for search engine optimization, and which that is a huge part of it. But if you are just starting for your content, if you have your website completely maximized for search engine optimization and somebody shows up to your website and it is not the content they're looking for because you just optimized it, but you don't have actual content there, you're doing yourself a disservice.
We have clients that get thousands of visitors, some hundreds of visitors a day, but the visitors don't do what they want them to do. Well, the reason being is they've got great search engine positioning, but they don't have the content that connects with what the visitor wants and drives a conversion.
Yeah, the rule of thumb should be write for your target market first and for search engines second.
So if you go through these homepage copy and branding and just go through it from a layman's terms, not from a search engine marketing perspective, not from a web marketing perspective, but what do your customers buy from you? What services and products do they buy from you? Who are you in the marketplace? What do you do? Write from that and have a rough sketch copy. Once you have that, then it's much easier to go to a web marketing firm like coming to us at Intuitive Websites, coming to somebody else saying, here's what I do, here's what I've done so far. Then it changes the dynamic on how to move to the next level.
The authors should have a Post-it note with their keywords right on their computer while they're writing these articles, because we've seen CEOs write entire articles that didn't have a single keyword in them, and that's not good either.
Right. But at least it's a start for somebody who's never done it before and going into it. Well, speaking of that, as far as starting, where does somebody get started? Where does somebody get resources to start? Well,
there's a lot of great books now on web copy. In fact, Amazon's loaded with books on website copy. They are coming out pretty much every week. So go take a look and see what strikes you. Most of them do actually a great job of explaining how to write copy for the web, because the web's been around a lot, enough time that people have done user testing. They know what people are expecting from web copy. And then make that decision. Do we go our own route, or do we bring an external person in? Whichever way you go, someone has to be the key point for website copy. And it's probably going to be a writer that understands how to write for the web. Or you can give us a call. We can help direct you in that path as well. If you decide to go internally, then get that person the training they need on web copy. You might want to look for a seminar. I mean, we have additional podcasts as well on web copy that we've written. But that's in a nutshell some of the things they need to do to get started.
There's some general rules of thumb, like keep the paragraphs really short. Knowing what we know about how people don't really read websites, long paragraphs are a sure turnoff. Bullets, lots of headings and subheadings. Just keep it engaging at the scanning level, so when people get interested, they can dive deeper, but keep everything kind of pithy and short.
So that would be the main difference between writing article copy, if you will, and web copy. Is keeping it short to the point, and if they want to go deeper, send them to another page to go deeper.
Yeah, so we have another podcast that gets into that in a lot of detail, so take a listen to that one.
Well, we end each of our podcasts with an action item. I know that all of our listeners are expecting that. So, guys, what are the key action items for the listener for this week's podcast?
I want to go first, and I want to say,
All right, Ray.
I want to say right. And what I want to remind people of is that whatever you do, you're an expert on, and I think we forget that. If you've been doing something for 5 years, you know more than probably 99.99% of the population. And if you just write down some of the things you think about every day, you are probably writing really good content, but you have to just do it.
I would agree with that. And also take the time to carve a spot out in your schedule to think about web content. Start with the branding strategy, then list the key pages you need content on your website, and then begin writing. And I think to add on to what Ray said there is the more you write, even about what you know and love, the better you're going to get at it. So start writing, absolutely.
And here's something we didn't talk about at all, but you're constantly reading, being exposed to interesting things about your industry. Share them with people, and that will be interesting as well.
Yeah, the podcasts that we do here in Intuitive Websites, most of them come from challenges that we've heard from clients over the last couple of weeks. And we've heard this challenge from our clients is, how do I get copy done? How do I find time to get it done? So that's one of the reasons that this podcast is being done. Think about the content that drives your brand and your business strategy. Find someone to be the point person for content, and then make the time, don't make the excuses, and get the content done.
That's a good one, Tom. Well, folks, we're going to have the next podcast here that we're going to...
Yeah, we'll dive a little deeper in the next podcast. We're going to talk about content that drives conversions. And so now if you've made the time to have your content done, how do you develop content that will actually drive conversions?
And that'll be in the next podcast, folks. Thanks for joining us here at the Intuitive Websites Internet Marketing Podcast.
This has been an Intuitive Websites Internet Marketing Podcast. For more information and to see all the available podcasts and much more, visit intuitiveblog.com.